Alright, Big Boss here. I know this is not going to be one of my usual videos I put out, but I gotta get in some serious shit right now. And with everything that happened in Buffalo, New York, Uvalde, Texas, and in Oklahoma, now those that are screaming for gun control have begun to mobilize even more. And sadly, for those of us that are into the tactical shooting sports, paintball, airsoft, we are beginning to find ourselves again as part of an unsung front in this culture war. Now, this also has ramifications on both sides of America's northern border, as Canada's cuckold-in-chief, Justin Trudeau, has essentially stopped anything to do with handguns, as far as putting a quote-unquote cap on them, not allowing their sale, import, or transfer. And I've also heard rumblings of a resurgence in Bill C-21 up there. So, with that being said, there is a lot to fucking unpack. Now, we all know what happened in those areas was wrong. It should never have happened. We're also still sifting through a lot of shit where we saw what happened in Texas. A bad judgment call led to more tragedies than what should have happened. I know there are a lot of cops out there that are hurting because they're in a position to do something, and the orders that they were given may have been the wrong ones. There may have been bad command decisions from a leadership perspective. All these things are swirling around, and sadly there's no shortage of political or social opportunists who are going to exploit this tragedy. Now, we're already seeing it most definitely with those that are the loudest proponents for gun control. Now, I'm not sure how many in paintball and airsoft feel about the Second Amendment, but for me and the people that I've met doing this sport, being part of this industry since I was 19, I'd say it's definitely in strong support of the Second Amendment. And here's the thing for all of us that are just getting into this kind of stuff. If history is any judge, politicians are opportunists, they can be hypocrites, they can be outright pieces of shit. Case in point would be the Port Arthur massacre in Australia. Now, keep in mind, Australia, Canada, they're part of the British Empire, so they don't have rights, they have privileges. And after the Port Arthur massacre, the Australian government decided to establish a national registry. And all they had to do was play the waiting game, and either another tragedy came up or something to allow them to feel justified in sending out enforcement letters and telling firearm owners either you surrender this type of gun or that type of gun, or you're going to be a criminal overnight. Now, with American law, Americans are pretty much, we have rights, meaning the government cannot take those away, and if you want to, you damn well better have a good legal case to do it, otherwise it's tossed. That's pretty much what our founders did. They set up the Constitution and this republic to have multiple fail-safes to prevent governmental overreach, but also to enable our government a means to maintain law and order, to prevent the idea, this grand experiment that is America from descending into madness and anarchy. So, very difficult balancing act. Now, with that, there's hell, you could look at history and you can see how totalitarian assholes have done this for decades. Case in point, early 1930s, Germany, the fall of the Weimar Republic, and the rise of the Greater German Reich, i.e., Nazi Germany. The Reichstag goes up in flames. That allowed Hitler's government to set up a so-called emergency police state. They were able to confiscate the guns and also use the excuse about if only the criminals having guns, it'll be easier for the police to do their jobs. Now, keep in mind, this is also just a year or two before the Nuremberg race laws are passed, before Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, the night in fog orders, and all that was needed was an excuse for our government to be able to crack down, strip its people of their rights, and in case of Germany, this led to the Holocaust for 6 million Jews, and that's not including gypsies, LGBT, Jehovah's Witnesses, political prisoners. Same with the Soviet Union after Vladimir Lenin came to power. Disarmed the people to a certain extent, that way they can't fight back against the government. And when Stalin took over, Stalin cranked that shit up to fucking 11. You had the purges, you had the gulags. And history has shown this is always what happens with any totalitarian government. Now, it doesn't matter if it was the Nazis or the communists. They're both totalitarian and they both left death and destruction in their wakes. That's why more people flee to the United States of America than anywhere else in the world. But I digress on the history lesson. Look, I just think it's hypocritical for those that are screaming the loudest for gun control have the finances and the capital either using government money or their own personal money to augment their own personal security teams. And speaking of their security teams, how many of them are ex-military? So, if we look at it like that, those that are screaming for gun control actually have their own private army of mercenaries. Now, I'm not, for all of you guys that are private military contractors or do that work in the private sector, I got nothing against you guys, especially those that go into harm's way on these contracts. That's pretty much my opinion on that one, but what's the bigger issue is how do we fight this insanity? How do we do this? First off, one of the greatest weapons for those of us that are fighting to hold on to our rights under the Second Amendment is education. Talk to people. It doesn't matter what kind of outreach it is, but it is a lot better to learn about something, to know it, and to try and understand it than have an emotionally based, fear-driven ignorance about it. That's the thing that those that scream for gun control love to exploit. They love to exploit the ignorance of the general public on firearms because we've gotten an increasingly urbanized society, and sadly, a lot of knowledge on stuff like this comes from movies or popular entertainment, hell, even the internet or social media, and sadly, some of it may not be the most accurate information as people tend to go to watch what could be asinine actions. So there is that. Secondly, would be to call out these people for their hypocrisy. Call them out for augmenting their personal security teams while screaming at us that we shouldn't have this or that. And write to your local political representatives. Tell them why any actions involving gun control are bad, that strip away rights. Show them the facts. Show them how firearms are used more in self-defense and crimes. Show them that and unveil to everyone how opportunistic these people really are. And maybe then the whole gun control movement dies. Education, knowledge. That's the best way we could fight this social cancer that is ignorance. Anyway, there are probably more people out there that have more knowledge on this than me. And you can find a written article about this over at outerheavenpaintball.blogspot.com. A link will be in the description to this video, as well as in the article is going to be some videos with guys that are more knowledgeable on all this than me. I'm just expressing my opinions on this stuff. Anyway, this is Big Boss, and I'm out here.